The alarm went off at 6:14, not because Daniel Hartwell had set it that way, he had set it for 6. But somewhere between the third and fourth snooze button, 14 minutes had dissolved the way mornings always did now, quietly, without ceremony, without anyone noticing. He lay still for a moment, staring at the ceiling of the bedroom that used to feel too small and now felt enormous. The water stain above the window had spread over the past 3 years. He kept meaning to get it looked at. He never did. Downstairs, Lily was already awake. He could hear her through the floorboards. The soft pad of her footsteps, the particular creak of the third step from the bottom. She was 6 years old and she knew every inch of this house the way only a child raised in one place can intuitively, completely, without having to think about it. She knew which cabinet stuck. She knew the dog's bowl was on the left, not the right. She knew that the yellow mug on the second shelf was Daddy's, and you didn't touch it. She also knew that the white mug with the painted sunflowers belonged to someone who wasn't here anymore. She had stopped touching that one when she was 4. Daniel sat up, pressed his palms against his eyes for a moment, then stood. The bedroom was neat in the way that rooms become neat when only one person uses them. A kind of controlled minimalism that looked organized from a distance and revealed its sadness up close. One side of the bed was always made. One nightstand still had a book on it, half finished, the bookmark at page 147. The other nightstand was bare except for a photograph. He didn't look at the photograph. He had learned not to. He showered in 5 minutes, dressed in 7, and was downstairs by 6:38. Which was 2 minutes ahead of schedule. Lily was at the kitchen table eating cereal. She had done it herself. The bowl, the spoon, the milk, all retrieved with the careful competence of a child who had grown up understanding that her father could not always be asked to notice things. "Morning, Bug," he said. "Morning." She didn't look up. She was reading the back of the cereal box, which was something she did every single morning, even though it never changed. He had long since stopped asking why. He poured coffee. The kitchen was bright on Sunday mornings. The window faced east, and for about 40 minutes, between 6:30 and 7:10, the light came through at a particular angle that made the room look almost golden. It was one of the few things about the house that still felt the same as before. Everything else had shifted the smell of the place, the rhythm of it, the particular way silence occupied space, but the morning light was unchanged. His wife had loved Sunday mornings. She used to make pancakes, not every Sunday, maybe once a month, but when she did, she made them from scratch, with buttermilk and a little too much vanilla, and the kitchen would smell like something from a different life. A better one, or maybe not better, just fuller, more populated, more alive. Her name was Claire Hartwell, née Saunders. 34 years old. Brown hair, green eyes. A laugh that came from somewhere genuine and deep. She had been a graduate researcher at Whitmore University, studying environmental policy, which meant she talked about aquifers at dinner parties and read reports in bed and cared ferociously about things most people treated as abstract. She had died on a Tuesday in February. A bridge collapse outside Garson Falls 40 minutes from home, a route she sometimes took if traffic on the main road was bad. The car had gone into the river. Rescue teams had worked for 72 hours. They had found the vehicle. They had found her bag. They had found her phone, cracked, in 3 feet of silt. They had never found her body. The official verdict was death by drowning, accidental, current conditions, visibility poor. Daniel had been told by patient and grim-faced officials that this was not unusual, that bodies were sometimes carried miles downstream, that closure was possible without physical confirmation. He had stood in the county coroner's office and listened to all of it. He had signed what needed to be signed. He had brought Lily home from his mother's house the next day and sat in this kitchen and told a 3-year-old that Mommy wasn't coming back, and the 3-year-old had looked at him with those green eyes, Claire's eyes, exactly Claire's eyes, and said, "Is she lost?" He had not known how to answer. 3 years. He was 38 now. Still worked at the architectural firm downtown, though in a reduced capacity. He had negotiated a 4-day week after the second year, which helped with school drop-offs and pickups, and the particular logistics of single parenthood. His mother helped when she could. His colleague Brendan helped when he remembered to. He had a system. Systems were what kept things from collapsing. He was not happy, but he was functional. He had decided, somewhere around the 18-month mark, that functional was enough. That functional was actually quite a lot, given everything. That getting Lily to school on time and fed at dinner and laughing at least once a day was a form of love that asked nothing from the person delivering it except endurance. He had endurance. The grief counselor, a woman named Dr. Voss, who he had seen for 7 months before mutually agreeing to stop, had told him that grief was not linear. She had used that word a great deal. Linear, as though he had arrived at her office expecting it to be. He hadn't. He knew grief moved in loops and ambushes and in strange tidal patterns that bore no relationship to calendars. He knew it arrived in the produce aisle when you reached for a particular brand of yogurt that your wife used to buy. He knew it arrived on Tuesday evenings in February, specifically when the light went a certain color. He knew it arrived in the face of his daughter. That last one he carried carefully. Lily was not a burden. She was the opposite. She was the reason his feet hit the floor each morning. But she was also a daily confrontation with everything that had been taken. She had Claire's eyes and Claire's stubbornness and Claire's particular way of going still when she was thinking hard about something, as though the whole body was redirecting power to the brain. She had Claire's habit of lining things up along a surface: pencils, small toys, spoons with a precision that had no apparent purpose but satisfied some internal requirement. Watching her do that, some evenings, was almost more than he could manage. He managed anyway. That was the whole of it, really. The whole enterprise of his life for 3 years. Managing, keeping the system running, making sure the house was warm and the refrigerator was stocked, and the library books were returned on time, and the dentist appointments were kept, and the bad dreams were soothed, and the school projects were started early enough not to will cause panic. He was good at it. He had not expected to be good at it. He had spent the first 4 months terrified that he was failing at everything simultaneously, that Lily was suffering in ways he couldn't see, that the whole structure would collapse without the person who had known intuitively how to hold it together. But it hadn't collapsed. He had learned. He had made thousands of small adjustments and built a different kind of family, smaller, quieter, organized around different rhythms that functioned. Not perfectly. Nothing was perfect, but it worked. Lily finished her cereal, pushed the bowl toward the center of the table, looked up at him with her mother's eyes. "Can we go to Pembridge today?" Pembridge Mall. Her obsession for the past 3 weeks, ever since her friend Marisol had gotten a stuffed fox from the toy store on the 2nd floor and brought it to school. Lily had touched it with the focused reverence of a child who has identified exactly what she wants in this world. Daniel drained his coffee. "Yeah," he said. "We can go to Pembridge." She smiled. Small, controlled, the way Lily always smiled, as if she was rationing joy, keeping it careful. He had thought about that a lot, whether it was temperament or grief or something else entirely. Dr. Patel, her child psychologist, said Lily was processing in her own way, that the quiet was not a warning sign, that some children expressed it outward and some inward, and inward didn't mean broken. He hoped that was true. He needed it to be true. "Finish getting dressed," he said. Pembridge Mall on a Sunday in December was exactly what it should not have been. Impossible. Daniel had forgotten or blocked out that this was the 3rd Sunday of the holiday shopping season. Every parking level was full. They circled twice before finding a spot on the roof deck in the frozen wind, and by the time they walked through the main entrance, Lily's cheeks were pink and his ears hurt. Inside, it was noise. Complete, layered, overlapping noise. The bass line of a dozen different stores, all playing different music. The specific roar of 1,000 conversations. Children. Announcements. The mechanical whir of the central escalators. Pembridge was a 4-story mall glass atrium in the center. Open walkways on each level. The kind of architecture that bounced sound in every direction until it became indistinguishable from weather. Lily held his hand. She always held his hand in crowds. Not from fear, exactly, but from something adjacent to it. A preference for contact in chaos. He understood that completely. They made their way to the second floor. The toy store, Whitlock's, was tucked between a sporting goods retailer and a kitchen supply shop. It was bright inside. The kind of aggressive cheerfulness that toy stores deployed like a weapon. Oversized displays, things that lit up and made noise for no reason. Lily went directly to the animal section. He watched her work her way along the shelf, methodical, serious, touching each option with 2 fingers before moving to the next. She found the fox within 30 seconds. Held it up. Looked at him. "How much?" she said. He looked at the tag. $32. "In the budget," he said. She pressed it against her chest. He had brought cash easier than navigating the crowds to a card terminal, he'd thought. The register was at the far end of the store, maybe 40 feet from where Lily was standing with her fox. He could see her clearly from there. He would be able to see her the entire time. "Stay here," he said. "Right here. Don't move." "Okay." "Lily." She looked up. "Right here." "I know, Dad." He went to the register. There was a line, of course, there was a line. 2 people ahead of him. A woman buying a board game who needed a price check, then a man paying with a card that didn't scan on the first try or the second. Daniel looked back over his shoulder. Lily was there, holding the fox, looking at the shelf next to her. He turned back. The card finally scanned. He stepped forward. 30 seconds, maybe 35. He paid. Took the bag. Turned around. Lily was not there. He stood still for exactly 1 second, the kind of stillness that is not calm, that is the body's intake of breath before it starts screaming. He scanned the animal section, the aisle left, the aisle right. The end cap displays. The entrance. No red coat. No small dark pigtails. No Lily. "Lily." He said it at normal volume first. Then, louder. He walked fast to where she'd been standing. The space was just a space. The shelf behind it was unchanged. He looked down at the floor. A small blue hair clip. Hers. He picked it up. His hand was shaking. He knew, in the part of him that was still functioning rationally, that children wandered in stores all the time. That it had been 30 seconds. That she was 6 years old and curious, and there was probably something on the end cap at the other end of the store that had caught her eye. He knew all of this. The irrational part of him, the part that had lived for 3 years with the specific knowledge of how suddenly and completely people could disappear, was already in a place that reason couldn't reach. He moved to the store entrance, searching the walkway outside. A river of people in both directions. Hundreds of coats, dozens of children, not one of them, Lily. "Excuse me." He grabbed the arm of a passing shopper, young woman, startled. "I'm sorry. Did you see a little girl?" Red coat, dark hair, about this tall. He held his hand at hip height. "No, I'm sorry." He was already moving, out of Whitlock's onto the second-floor walkway. Left first, because the escalators were left, and if she'd wandered, she might have gone toward the escalators. He covered the length of the walkway in what felt like running but was probably fast walking. Checked the escalator landing. Nothing. Right then. Back the other way. Past the toy store. Past the sporting goods. Past the corner. Lily. Loud now. Loud enough that people turned. He didn't care. A few people slowed. A woman in a gray parka put her hand on his arm. "Are you all right?" And he said his daughter's name, and the woman's face shifted into something focused. and she turned immediately and started scanning the crowd on her side of the walkway, because that is what strangers do in these moments, and he was grateful for it in a way he couldn't process at the time. He found a mall security kiosk near the food court end of the second floor. A young guard named, per his badge, Officer Rayfield, late 20s, visibly unsure how to handle the man approaching him at high speed. "My daughter," Daniel said. 6 years old, red coat. She was in Whitlock's and she's gone. Maybe 3 minutes ago." Rayfield was already reaching for his radio. "Good. That was good. Name? Lily Hartwell. Lily. The radio crackled. Rayfield relayed the description. Daniel was already looking past him, scanning the open atrium below, the walkways on 3 and 1, the food court tables, hundreds of faces, none of them hers. "Sir, can you wait here?" "No," Daniel said, and walked away. The security office was on the first floor, behind a door marked Staff near the south entrance. Rayfield had radioed ahead, which meant someone was expecting Daniel when he arrived. A senior guard, mid-40s, heavyset, named Calloway. She had the practiced steadiness of someone who had done this before. "We've got camera coverage across all 4 floors, she told him. "We're already pulling footage from Whitlock's entrance." The office was small, 2 monitors, a desk stacked with binders. Calloway pulled up the feed while Daniel stood behind her, barely breathing. There, Lily, in her red coat, standing exactly where he'd told her to stand, holding the Fox. Then the timestamp read 10 hours, 47 minutes and 23 seconds. She turned her head. Something had caught her attention. Something to the left, out of the camera frame. She took 1 step, then another. Then she walked out of the store. She was not running. She was not frightened. She walked the way a child walks toward something familiar. The second camera, the one covering the second-floor walkway, picked her up 18 seconds later, and next to her, partially obscured by the angle, was a woman, brown coat, dark hair, medium length. The camera was positioned too high, the angle too oblique, to catch the face clearly. Just the back of a head, a hand reaching down. Lily had taken that hand, willingly. Without hesitation, Daniel's throat closed. "Can you?" He pointed at the screen. "Can you get a better angle?" Calloway was already cycling through cameras, tracking the pair as they moved down the second-floor walkway toward the north end of the building. Camera 3, still from behind. Camera 7, at the junction near the elevator banks. A partial turn, a jawline, a cheekbone, nothing complete. They stepped into the elevator. The elevator camera was not working. Calloway said something about maintenance, about an outstanding work order. He didn't hear most of it. He was staring at the last clear frame, the woman's hand, around Lily's hand, the back of her dark hair, her brown coat. Something was drilling into him from the inside, something he refused to name. He'd been in relationships with the particular geometry of grief long enough to know that the mind tried to connect dots that weren't there. He knew that. He knew the mind was reckless when it was afraid. But the walk, the way the woman moved, he'd spent 8 years next to that walk. "What floor did they exit?" he asked. Calloway checked. 4, far north corner. He was already heading for the door. The 4th floor of Pembridge was the quiet floor. Most people didn't come up here. There was a cinema complex that was currently between screenings, a mostly empty furniture showroom, and a corridor of shuttered units that had never fully leased. On a December Sunday, with the crowds concentrated on 2 and 3, the 4th floor had a different quality to it. Less noise, more space. The kind of hollow echo that made footsteps sound solitary. Daniel came out of the elevator at a run. Stopped. The corridor stretched ahead of him, maybe 200 feet, lined with closed shop fronts on the left and windows overlooking the atrium on the right. At the far end, where the corridor turned toward the cinema entrance, a red coat. He started running again. The figure was small, standing still, facing the window. Lily. She turned. It was her. completely unharmed, holding the stuffed fox against her chest, looking at him with her mother's serious eyes. Not frightened, not crying. He dropped to his knees in front of her, grabbed her shoulders. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" "I'm okay, Dad. Why did you leave?" "I told you to stay." "She found me," Lily said. He felt it before he processed it. The air behind him changed. A shift in the quality of the silence. The particular way space rearranges itself when someone enters it who has not been there for a very long time. He stood up slowly. He turned around, 30 feet away, standing still in the empty corridor, in a brown wool coat he did not recognize, with dark hair shorter than he remembered it, and green eyes that had not changed at all. Claire. The world did not stop. He wished it would. He needed something to grip. The corridor kept existing. The fluorescent lights kept buzzing. Somewhere, far below, the mall kept roaring. His wife looked at him. Her face was composed. That was the word his brain produced. Uselessly composed. Not cold, not hostile, not the face of a ghost or a hallucination. Just composed. Controlled in the way that something is controlled when it is holding enormous pressure behind a surface that must not crack. She said, "You're late." His mouth did not work. "You were supposed to be here at 10:15, she said. "The line at the toy store took longer than I expected." He could not speak, could not move. Lily tugged at his sleeve. "She said she knows you, Dad." He said her name, just her name. Once, Claire. It came out of him the way something comes out that has been pressed down for too long, broken at the edges. Barely a word at all. She flinched. It was the first break in the composure. Small, but there. Her jaw moved once, then stopped. "Not here," she said. "What?" He couldn't finish the sentence. Tried again. "Daniel." Her voice was low. "Careful. I know what you're feeling right now. I need you to hold it for 10 more minutes. Can you do that? You're dead." The words came out flat, like a fact being recited. Like the thing you say when the alternative is losing your mind. "I know what I'm supposed to be," she said. "Claire." His voice broke on the second syllable. Lily pressed against his leg. She was watching them both with her serious, careful eyes, taking it in the way she took everything in, quietly, fully, storing it. "There's a cafe," Claire said. "Back of the cinema corridor. It's closed, but the door isn't locked. We can talk there." 3 minutes, Daniel. Then I'll explain everything." He looked at her face for a long time. He had looked at a photograph of that face almost every morning for 3 years. Sometimes deliberately, when he felt strong enough. Sometimes accidentally, caught off guard by the particular angle of the sunlight. He had the geometry of it memorized in the way you memorize something that has become part of you, not learned, just known. This was the same face. Older. Changed in small, precise ways. A scar he didn't recognize below her left ear. Shorter hair. The set of her jaw different. Something harder in it. But the same face. He followed her. The cafe was called Montrose Coffee. It had closed 4 months ago, a hand-lettered sign still in the window saying thanks for 3 wonderful years. The chairs were stacked on the tables. The espresso machine had a cloth draped over it. But the door, as Claire had said, was unlocked. She went in first, then Lily, then Daniel. He pulled 2 chairs off a table. Sat Lily down. Looked at Claire. She was already sitting across from him, her hands folded on the table in front of her. Holding herself very carefully. The way you hold something that might break. He said nothing. He had decided, in the 30 feet between the corridor and this room, that he would say nothing until she had said everything. She looked at Lily first. "Do you still have the book I gave you?" Lily nodded. "Where?" Daniel said. "I put it in her school bag," Claire said quietly. 3 weeks ago. On a Tuesday. She had soccer practice that afternoon and the bag was on the hook by the back door at your mother's house." He stared at her. "Your mother's back porch door doesn't lock properly," Claire said. It hasn't since 2019. The latch is loose. I've been meaning to tell. She stopped, pressed her lips together. I've been checking on her. On both of you. From a distance. For a long time. How long? Most of the 3 years. He stood up. The chair scraped. He walked to the window, the one facing the closed counter, and stood there with his back to her for a moment. Breathing. The accident, he said, was real, she said. The bridge gave out. The car went in. I got out. I don't fully know how. The current was, she paused. I was in the water for a long time. I made it to the bank about 1.5 miles downstream. By the time I was on land, I'd been missing for 4 hours, and there were 3 news vans at the bridge. And you didn't. He turned. I couldn't. She looked at the table. 3 months before the accident, she said. I found something in my research. In the water data I was analyzing for the Garson Falls watershed study, there were industrial discharge records that had been falsified. Not minor discrepancies, systematic falsification. For 12 years. The company responsible had municipal contracts in 4 counties. And the people who signed off on those falsifications were not mid-level bureaucrats. She stopped. Do you understand what I'm saying? He said nothing. The people whose names were in those documents, Claire continued, were connected to things that did not stop at environmental violations. I made the mistake of contacting a lawyer, the wrong lawyer, as it turned out. Within 72 hours, 2 things happened. Our house was broken into while we were both at work. And I started being followed. She looked up at him. The bridge collapse was not an accident. Daniel. The room was very quiet. The brake line on the car, I found out later, after. Her voice had gone flat, controlled. When I came out of the water, on that riverbank, I understood that I was supposed to be dead, that someone had made me supposed to be dead, and that if I reappeared, if I called home, if I went to the police, if I contacted you, whatever protection my disappearance provided to you, and Lily would disappear too. He sat back down. He sat down because his legs didn't seem willing to keep him standing. You chose, he said. You chose to let me think you were dead. You chose to let her. He gestured toward Lily, who was sitting still, holding her fox, watching them both. Yes, her voice cracked for the first time. Just the one word. Yes, Daniel. I chose that. I have to live with that. I've been living with it every day for 3 years. It is the worst thing I have ever done, and I would do it again because the alternative was worse. How do you know that? How do you? Because I've been watching, she said. And because 8 months ago, the man who ordered the brake line cut was indicted on federal charges. And because the investigation has been moving. And because 6 weeks ago, a federal contact I've been working with told me that within 60 days, the major players would be charged, and the primary threat would be neutralized. She looked at him steadily. We are inside that window now. That's why you came back. That's why I made contact with Lily. Yes, because it's almost over. And because I couldn't. She stopped, looked at her daughter. I couldn't wait until it was fully over. I needed her to know I was real. Lily spoke. She read me the book, Lily said calmly. The one about the fox who goes away and comes back. She read it to me at Grandma's house. Daniel looked at his daughter. You knew? He said. I didn't know, Lily said carefully. I thought I made her up. Sometimes I could smell her perfume and then I thought she wasn't really there. But she was. She looked at Claire. She was real. He wanted to be angry. He was angry. He was absolutely, completely, lethally angry in a way that he had no architecture for. Because for 3 years he had been building a life around a fact that was not a fact, and now the foundation was gone, and he had nowhere to put the rage that came with that. 3 years, he said. I know. Lily's first day of school. Both of them. The first one, the second one. His voice was flat. The night she had pneumonia, and I sat next to her bed for 6 hours. The night I couldn't. He stopped. The night I couldn't do it. The night I called Brendan at 2 in the morning and asked him to come over because I needed someone to be there. Those nights happened, Claire. I lived them. I know. Did you? He looked at her. Were you close enough to know? She held his gaze. The second Christmas, she said quietly. You put Lily to bed and then you sat on the back porch, steps in the cold, for 40 minutes. You were wearing her coat because it was the nearest thing to the door. You had your phone out, but you didn't call anyone. You just sat there. His jaw tightened. I was across the street, Claire said, in a dark car. Why didn't you? Because I didn't know if it was safe yet. And because I didn't know, she faltered. I didn't know if you would want me to. The silence between them was different from other silences. It had texture and weight. It was 3 years thick. I prayed for you, he said finally. Every night for about a year. I'm not a religious person. I don't know who I thought I was talking to, but I prayed that wherever you were, it wasn't cold. A pause. I wanted it to not be cold. She looked at him. Her eyes were wet, but she didn't blink. It was sometimes cold, she said. He looked away. Lily had climbed off her chair. She walked around the table. She put her hand on Claire's arm. Are you coming home? She said. And Claire Hartwell, who had survived a river and 3 years of silence and the particular torture of watching her family from a distance, who had held herself together through things that would have destroyed other people. Claire pressed her hand over her daughter's and said, in a voice that barely made it out, I want to. I want to so much. That was when the door opened. He came in without knocking. A man. Late 40s. Thick neck, gray jacket, the kind of face that had spent a long time not smiling. He was not holding anything. He didn't need to. Behind him, visible through the glass door of the closed cafe, another figure in the corridor, standing still, watching. Daniel was on his feet before he fully registered what was happening. The man looked at Claire. Miss Saunders. He used her maiden name. We need to finish this conversation. Claire stood slowly. Her face had gone carefully blank. That's not going to happen, she said. The timeline moved, the man said. You know that. 2 days ago it moved, and you know that, and you still... You followed me here, Claire said. You made yourself followable. Daniel stepped between them. He was not a large man, not a physically imposing one. He was an architect who ran 3 miles on Tuesday and Thursday mornings, and had not been in a fight since he was 19 years old. But something had come loose inside him in the last 40 minutes, something that had been under pressure for 3 years, and the man in the gray jacket was on the wrong side of it. Get away from my family, Daniel said. The man looked at him, not threatening. Something worse, evaluating. Mr. Hartwell, he said. I'm not here to cause harm. I'm here because your wife left a controlled situation before the timeline was secure, and we need her to return to it. Who are you? Daniel said. Claire said, behind him. His name is Garland. He's been managing my protection for the last 14 months. Daniel turned. Protection, he said. It's complicated, Claire said. He followed you here. He wasn't supposed to. Garland said. Barris is in the building. Claire went still, completely still. The way a person goes still who understands exactly what that sentence means and does not want to. Who, Daniel said, is Barris? He's the reason I'm still in this, Claire said. He's the one who ordered. She stopped, looked at Lily. He's why we can't go home yet. Lily was watching all of this from her chair, holding her fox with both hands. Not crying, just watching. That was the moment Daniel understood something about his daughter that he had not fully understood before. She had her mother's capacity to absorb terrible things without collapsing under them. She had learned to hold the weight of what was happening and stay upright. She had been doing it for 3 years. He walked to her. Crouched down. Bug, he said. We're going to walk out of here. You stay right next to me. You hold my hand the whole time. Okay? Okay, Lily said. He stood, looked at Claire. looked at Garland. "Tell me how to get her out of this building." Garland said, "Service corridor, south side, first floor. I have a car at the loading dock. If we move now, you," Daniel said, "are not touching my daughter." "Daniel." Claire's voice was sharp. "He's on our side." "I don't know whose side he's on." "I know whose side I'm on." He looked at Garland. "Draw me a map. Verbally. Right now." Garland looked at him for a moment. Then, to Daniel's surprise, he nodded. "Service stairs are through the door at the end of this corridor. Down 3 flights. Left at the bottom, you'll go through a loading area. Fire door at the end takes you to the south parking access. There's a silver Suburban parked at the 3rd bay. Plates end in 77 Delta. Leave the keys in the ignition, I'll get there." Daniel held out his hand to Lily. She took it. He looked at Claire. She was already looking at him. In her eyes, in the 3 years changed, River survived. Everything held face of his wife, there was something he had not expected to see. Something that was not guilt, not explanation, not apology. Something simpler and worse. Hope. Raw, painful hope. The kind that has been kept alive in impossible conditions and has come out the other side unsure whether it's still wanted. He said, "Are you coming?" Her eyes changed. "I need to." She glanced at Garland. "Are you coming?" he said again. She crossed the room in 4 steps. They went through the door. The service corridor was gray concrete and bare bulbs. It smelled like cardboard and cleaning fluid and the specific nowhere of places that are not meant to be seen. Their footsteps were very loud. They moved fast. Daniel in front with Lily, Claire behind. Garland, to Daniel's surprise, had stayed in the cafe. 3 floors of stairs. Lily didn't complain, didn't slow down. At the 2nd floor landing, they heard voices above them. 2 men, moving fast. Claire put her hand on his back, pressed. "Keep going." They kept going. 1st floor. The loading corridor, long, wide, smelling of rubber and exhaust. Forklifts parked along one wall. The fire door at the end. 20 feet from the door, Claire stopped. Daniel turned. "Go," she said. "What?" "They're not following you. They're following me. If we separate here..." "No," he said. "Daniel, that sentence," he said, "is not happening. Not twice. If I come with you, they follow the car. If I..." "Claire." His voice was very quiet. "You don't get to disappear again." Her eyes filled. She held it back. "There are 2 of them," she said. "Garland will deal with them, but it takes time. If you go now, we go together or we don't go," he said. "That's what it is now." Lily let go of his hand, walked to her mother, put her arms around Claire's waist. It was not a dramatic gesture. It was the gesture of a 6-year-old who had identified where she needed to be and moved there without hesitation. Claire held her, both arms tight. Her face pressed into Lily's dark hair. Her eyes were closed. Her mouth moved no sound. Then she looked up. "Okay," she said. They went through the fire door together. The cold hit them immediately. December, loading dock, north wind. The parking area was half-empty commercial vehicles, a few sedans. 3rd bay, silver Suburban, keys in the ignition, as promised. Daniel got Lily into the back seat, buckled her, closed the door, walked to the driver's side. Claire was already in the passenger seat. He started the engine. As he pulled out of the loading bay, he saw 2 figures emerge from the fire door behind them. They were moving fast, then stopped. One of them held up something, a phone or a radio. He didn't stay to identify which. He drove. They drove for an hour. No one talked much. Lily fell asleep in the back seat around the 40-minute mark, the stuffed fox wedged under her cheek. Daniel drove north, away from the city, into the kind of flat winter landscape where the sky goes from white to gray to the particular blue of a fading afternoon. Claire sat next to him and watched the road. At 1 hour and 7 minutes, Daniel took an exit at random and pulled into a gas station. He sat with the engine running. "The federal contact you mentioned," he said. "His name is Rourke, Assistant U.S. Attorney. He's been building the case against Barris and the three others for 22 months. We are 6 weeks out from indictments." She paused. "Maybe 4 weeks now. Things have been moving faster. And then it's over." Rourke told me that once the indictments land, Barris's incentive to tie up loose ends disappears. Any action at that point only adds to the charges and destroys whatever cooperation deal he might be angling for. So we wait 6 weeks. Something like that. "Where?" She was quiet for a moment. "There's a place in Vermont, a town called Hadley. I rented a house there 18 months ago under a different name. When I first started working with Rourke, I've never actually stayed in it. I just kept it in case." A pause. "I wasn't sure it would be needed." "What?" "I wasn't sure you'd want it to be needed," she said. "I wasn't sure you'd want me there." The gas station hummed and flickered around them. A truck pulled in on the far side. A teenage attendant in a bright vest made his way across the lot, hands in pockets. Daniel looked at the steering wheel. "When you were on the riverbank," he said, "after you got out, what did you think about first?" She didn't answer immediately. "Lily," she said. "And then you. And then the fact that I couldn't call." A pause. "And then I remember this very specifically. I thought about the pancakes, that I hadn't made them in 3 weeks because I'd been too busy with the research, and that I'd been planning to make them that Sunday, and now I wasn't going to." He didn't say anything. "I thought about that for a strange amount of time," she said. "Lying on a riverbank in February, bleeding from my shoulder." "The pancakes." He put the car in drive. "Vermont," he said. She looked at him. "It's a 3-hour drive from here," she said carefully. "I know, Daniel. 3 hours is a manageable drive," he said. "Lily will be awake by then. We'll need to stop for food somewhere around the 2-hour mark. She'll want a grilled cheese if there's one available." He pulled out of the gas station. Claire was quiet for a long moment. "She still likes grilled cheese?" she said. "Every time," he said. She made a sound, then small, brief, not quite a laugh, but in the vicinity of one. The first one he'd heard from her in 3 years. It sounded the same. Exactly the same. He kept driving. They reached Hadley at dusk. The house was on the edge of a small town, old, well-maintained, the kind of New England structure that had been standing long enough to seem completely certain of its right to be there. A big porch, a maple tree in the front yard, bare and enormous. Snow on the ground, undisturbed. Lily woke up as Daniel parked. She looked out the window, looked at the house, looked at Claire. "Is this where we're staying?" "For a little while," Claire said. "Does it have a yard?" "The maple tree," Daniel said. "I want to climb it in spring." "It's December," Daniel said. "I'm saying in spring," Lily said, with the slightly impatient precision of a 6-year-old who has been misunderstood. He got out of the car and opened her door. She climbed out, still holding the fox, and walked up the porch steps like she'd been there 100 times. He stood next to Claire on the path leading to the house. "It's not forgiven," he said quietly. "Not yet. I need you to know that." "I know," she said. "There's a lot that has to be said, and it's going to take time." "I know, and if you disappear again, I won't." He looked at her. In the last light of the December evening, with her shorter hair and her river survivor's jaw, and her green eyes that Lily had inherited and worn every day for 6 years like a reminder, she was real. That was still the most impossible part. "Okay," he said. They walked up to the porch. The 6 weeks in Hadley were not easy. Nothing about the 6 weeks was easy. The house was warm. That was the first thing. The previous tenant, whoever Claire had arranged it through, had left behind a functional furnace, a woodpile on the side porch, and an assortment of mismatched but sufficient furniture. They had heat, they had beds, they had a kitchen large enough that 2 people could move in it without stepping on each other, which turned out to matter. What they did not have was a script for what they were doing. Daniel called his office on the second day and said he had a family situation and needed 2 weeks of emergency leave. His manager, a precise and quietly decent man named Fletcher, asked no questions and said the work would wait. He called his mother that evening and told her not everything, not yet, just enough. That Lily was safe, that something had happened that he needed time to process. His mother, who had been raised in a family where people did not ask questions that the other person wasn't ready to answer, said, "Okay, call me when you can." He called Brendan on day 4 and said even less, just that he was out of the city for a while and not to worry. Brendan, being Brendan, sent a text the next morning that said, "You good?" And then, after a pause, asking for real. And Daniel stared at that text for a long time before typing back, "Getting there," which was not a lie. Getting there was the accurate description of what was happening. He and Claire talked. Not continuously, not in the Hollywood way, where two people in a kitchen at 2 in the morning solve the entire ledger of what has happened between them, in one long, cathartic conversation. They talked in pieces. 10 minutes while Lily was outside. 30 minutes in the evenings after she was asleep. A few sentences at breakfast that meant more than they contained. He asked her about the 3 years, and she told him. Not all of it at once. Slowly, carefully, the way someone tells things that they have been holding alone for a very long time and are not quite sure yet whether it is safe to put down. She had been in 4 different cities. Boston, then a small town in upstate New York, then Chicago, then back east. She had worked jobs that were off the books, cleaning, kitchen work, once a 6-month stretch as a short-order cook in a place in the Chicago warehouse district, where no one asked any questions about the quiet woman who showed up at 5 in the morning and worked without complaint. She had kept in contact with Rourke through a system of communication that she described without detail, but which clearly required more paranoia than any ordinary person maintained. She had been frightened, she said, for most of it. Not constantly, but in a way that sat beneath the surface of everything, ready to surface at any moment. She had also, in all of that, read every paper she could find about environmental watershed policy, because she could not stop herself from thinking, and she needed to think about something. He told her that he had finished the book on her nightstand, page 147 through the end. That it had been good. She said, "I knew you'd say that. I left it there specifically because I knew you wouldn't be able to resist." He looked at her. "You left it there on purpose?" "I liked the idea of you finishing it," she said simply. He didn't know what to do with that. He put it somewhere to come back to. Lily, in those 6 weeks, was the organizing force of each day. She wanted routines. She had been raised on routines, and the temporary nature of the house in Hadley did not change her need for them. Breakfast, at the same time, the same general shape of morning. She designated specific chairs as hers, as his, as Claire's, something she announced on day 3 with the quiet authority of someone ratifying a treaty. She talked to Claire with a directness and ease that Daniel found almost overwhelming to witness, because he had spent 6 years watching Lily hold herself contained and careful, and something in her had loosened, something that had been waiting. Claire was good with her. Patient in the particular way, attentive without hovering, present without crowding. She remembered things. What Lily found funny, what she found intolerable. She sat with her in the evenings, and they read together. And Daniel sometimes stood in the doorway and watched them, and felt a feeling that had no clean name, something between relief and grief and the particular vertigo of having your world reorganized around a truth that changes everything. It took him until the 4th week to stop waking up every morning expecting her to be gone. And then, in the first week of February, the indictments were unsealed. Daniel read about it on his phone, standing at the kitchen window of the house in Hadley, watching Lily build something in the snow in the front yard. She was talking to it as she built it, long, serious explanations. She did that, had always done that. Claire came downstairs. She was wearing an old sweater his, from before, pulled from the bag he'd driven back to get from their house in the city 2 weeks ago. She'd had to borrow a lot. Most of what she'd been living with for 3 years was not the kind of thing you kept. She looked over his shoulder at the phone. Read what was on the screen. He didn't say anything. She put her hand on his arm. It was the first time she'd touched him since the mall. He had needed the distance. She had understood without being told, or maybe she had needed it too, in her own way. The distance between them had been a kind of honesty. They were not healed. They were not restored. They were two people who had been severed and were sitting with that fact, trying to understand what it meant before they tried to decide what came next. "Rourke called this morning," she said, "while you were getting Lily's coat." He said, "We're clear." That's the word he used. Clear. He looked out the window at Lily. "She's building a fox," he said. "Is it good?" "It has approximately the right number of legs." Claire made a sound that was, this time, definitely a laugh. He didn't turn around, but after a moment he put his hand over hers, where it rested on his arm. Outside, Lily stepped back to evaluate her snow fox. Found it satisfactory. Gave it a short, serious speech about something that could not be heard through the glass. They watched her. For a little while, neither of them moved. They just stood at the window, in the February light, in the house in Vermont, watching their daughter talk to something she had made herself. It was not fixed. It was not over. There were conversations ahead that would take months, maybe years. There was grief to be processed, his, hers, Lily's. There were the 3 years that could not be undone, only accounted for, only slowly, carefully, carried. But right now, the window, the light, the snow, Lily waving. He raised his hand and waved back. Love does not disappear. It learns different shapes. Sometimes it looks like pancakes. Sometimes it looks like a river you came out of. Sometimes it looks like a 6-year-old explaining things to a snow fox in a Vermont yard, while two people watch from a window and try, slowly, to remember how to stand next to each other. That's enough. For today, that's enough.